Have you ever wondered why one apple tree produces baskets of crisp, beautiful fruit while another tree of the same age struggles with small apples, weak growth, and constant disease problems? The answer often comes down to a single spring task that many gardeners either skip completely or do incorrectly: pruning. In fact, one of the most common mistakes apple tree owners make is believing that more branches automatically mean more apples. It sounds logical, but the opposite is often true. An overcrowded apple tree can lose a significant portion of its potential harvest because sunlight cannot reach the fruiting wood, air circulation becomes poor, and diseases spread more easily throughout the canopy. A properly pruned apple tree is healthier, stronger, easier to manage, and far more productive. Good pruning helps direct the tree's energy where it matters most, encourages the development of quality fruit, reduces disease pressure, and extends the productive life of the tree for decades. Today, we're going to walk through everything you need to know about properly pruning an apple tree in spring. We'll cover the best timing, the tools you'll need, the science behind pruning, how to prune young trees, how to manage mature trees, how to revive neglected trees, and the common mistakes that can ruin an otherwise healthy orchard. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what to cut, what to keep, and why every cut matters. Let's get started. Before making a single cut, it's important to understand why spring pruning is so valuable. Apple trees naturally want to grow larger every year. Left completely alone, they develop dense canopies filled with competing branches. While the tree may look impressive, much of that growth becomes unproductive. Think of an apple tree as a solar-powered fruit factory. Every leaf captures sunlight and converts it into energy. However, when branches become overcrowded, many leaves and fruiting sites remain in permanent shade. The tree continues using resources to maintain those shaded branches, but they contribute very little to fruit production. Pruning solves this problem. By selectively removing unnecessary branches, we improve sunlight penetration, increase air circulation, stimulate healthy growth, and help the tree focus its resources on productive fruiting wood. This is why experienced orchardists often say that pruning is one of the most powerful tools available for influencing fruit quality and yield. Here's an interesting fact. Research and decades of commercial orchard experience have shown that apples exposed to adequate sunlight develop better color, improved sugar content, and enhanced flavor compared to fruit growing deep inside shaded canopies. In other words, pruning doesn't just affect how many apples you harvest. It also affects how good those apples taste. Now let's talk about timing. One of the biggest questions gardeners ask is when exactly spring pruning should take place. The ideal time depends partly on your climate, but the general rule is surprisingly simple. Prune during late winter or very early spring while the tree is still dormant but before vigorous new growth begins. At this stage, the structure of the tree is clearly visible because there are no leaves hiding the branches. The risk of severe winter injury has mostly passed, yet the tree has not fully activated its spring growth cycle. For many regions, this means pruning sometime between late February and early April. In colder climates, gardeners often wait until the coldest winter temperatures are over. In milder regions, pruning may occur earlier. A practical guideline is to prune before buds open significantly but after the danger of extreme cold has diminished. If the buds have already begun expanding slightly, light pruning is usually still acceptable. However, once leaves are actively developing, major pruning becomes less desirable because the tree has already invested energy into new growth. Here's another useful insight. The later you prune during the dormant season, the more dwarfing effect you tend to achieve. Earlier dormant pruning generally stimulates stronger vegetative growth. This principle is often used by commercial growers when managing tree vigor. Before beginning any pruning work, gather the proper tools. Using sharp, clean equipment is essential. For small branches, hand pruners work well. For medium-sized branches, loppers provide additional leverage. For larger limbs, a pruning saw is usually the best option. Some orchardists also carry a small hand saw specifically designed for tree work because it creates cleaner cuts than many general-purpose saws. Avoid using dull tools. Dull blades crush tissue rather than making clean cuts. Damaged tissue heals more slowly and can increase the risk of disease. Now let's discuss sanitation. Many gardeners overlook this step entirely. If you prune a diseased tree and then immediately move to a healthy one using the same tools, you can unintentionally spread pathogens. Before starting work, clean blades thoroughly. Many growers use alcohol-based disinfectants or diluted disinfecting solutions recommended for horticultural equipment. If disease is suspected, sanitize tools between trees and sometimes even between major cuts. A few extra seconds spent cleaning tools can prevent years of disease problems. Now let's move to the actual pruning process. Whenever approaching an apple tree, begin by standing back several feet and observing the entire structure. Don't start cutting immediately. Spend time understanding the tree. Look for its overall shape. Identify major scaffold branches. Notice crowded areas. Locate damaged wood. Visualize the structure you want before making the first cut. Experienced pruners often spend more time evaluating than cutting. The first branches removed should almost always be dead, damaged, or diseased wood. This category is often called the 3DS. Dead wood serves no productive purpose. Damaged branches can become entry points for pests and diseases. Diseased wood may spread problems throughout the tree. Removing these branches first instantly improves tree health and makes the remaining pruning decisions easier. After removing the 3DS, focus on crossing branches. When two branches rub against each other, wounds develop. These wounds create opportunities for disease organisms and insects. Select the stronger or better positioned branch and remove the competing one. Next, remove branches growing inward toward the center of the canopy. Apple trees generally perform best when light can penetrate throughout the crown. Inward-growing branches often create congestion rather than productivity. Now let's discuss water sprouts. These are vigorous vertical shoots that grow rapidly upward. They commonly appear after heavy pruning or from older wood. Water sprouts typically produce little useful fruit and often shade more productive branches. Most should be removed during pruning. However, occasionally a well-positioned water sprout can be retained and trained to replace an aging branch. Good pruning is not simply about removing growth. It's about selecting the right growth. Another important category is root suckers. These shoots emerge from the base of the trunk or root system. They divert energy away from productive portions of the tree and should generally be removed. Now let's examine how pruning differs between young and mature trees. Young apple trees require formative pruning. The goal is not maximizing immediate fruit production. The goal is creating a strong framework that will support decades of harvests. Many beginners make the mistake of allowing young trees to grow without guidance. Unfortunately, structural problems become increasingly difficult to correct later. During the first several years, focus on establishing well-spaced scaffold branches. Scaffold branches are the major limbs forming the permanent framework of the tree. Ideally, these branches should emerge at wide angles rather than narrow angles. Wide branch angles create stronger attachments. Narrow angles are more likely to split under heavy fruit loads or during storms. If multiple leaders compete near the top of the tree, select the strongest central leader and remove competitors. Many apple trees perform well using a central leader system. This structure resembles a Christmas tree shape with a dominant central trunk and progressively shorter branches toward the top. The design allows excellent sunlight distribution. During formative pruning, remove only what is necessary. Excessive pruning can delay fruiting. The objective is gradual training rather than aggressive cutting. Here's a fascinating fact about apple biology. Fruit buds often form on short shoots called spurs. These spurs can remain productive for many years when properly exposed to sunlight. Protecting healthy fruiting spurs is one of the keys to maintaining consistent harvests. Now let's move to mature apple trees. Maintenance pruning becomes the primary focus. A mature tree already possesses its basic framework. The goal shifts toward preserving productivity and managing canopy density. Begin by removing dead, diseased, damaged, crossing, and inward-growing branches. Then evaluate light penetration. A useful question to ask is whether sunlight can reach most areas of the canopy. If large sections remain heavily shaded, selective thinning may be necessary. Thinning cuts remove entire branches back to their point of origin. These cuts open the canopy without stimulating excessive regrowth. Many experienced growers prefer thinning cuts over heading cuts whenever possible. Heading cuts shorten branches. While useful in certain situations, they often stimulate vigorous new shoot growth. Thinning cuts generally create a calmer, more balanced response. One common mistake among beginners is topping the tree. Topping means cutting major branches indiscriminately at a fixed height. This practice usually triggers dense regrowth, weak branch attachments, and future management. Problems. Professional orchardists almost never recommend topping apple trees. Instead, height should be controlled through selective branch removal and proper structural management. Let's talk about canopy shape. Why is shape so important? Because sunlight drives fruit production. A dense canopy acts like an umbrella. The outer leaves capture most available light while interior branches remain shaded. As shading increases, fruit quality decreases and productive spurs gradually decline. The ideal canopy allows sunlight to filter throughout the tree. Air should move freely between branches. Good airflow helps leaves dry more quickly after rain, reducing conditions favorable to fungal diseases. Think of pruning as creating windows throughout the canopy. Every window allows additional sunlight and airflow to enter. Commercial growers frequently evaluate canopies from multiple angles to ensure light distribution remains balanced. Now let's discuss sanitary pruning. Sanitary pruning focuses specifically on removing unhealthy plant material. This includes branches affected by disease, winter injury, pest damage, cankers, and breakage. When removing diseased wood, cut below visibly affected tissue. Dispose of infected material properly. Do not leave diseased branches lying beneath the tree. In some cases, local extension recommendations may suggest destroying infected material entirely. Disease management always works best when sanitation and pruning operate together. Here's another practical tip. After storms, inspect trees carefully. Broken branches should be removed cleanly rather than left torn. Clean cuts heal much more effectively than ragged wounds. Now let's explore rejuvenation pruning. This is one of the most challenging but rewarding forms of pruning. Many homeowners inherit neglected apple trees that haven't been pruned for years. The canopy becomes crowded, fruit size declines, disease increases, and harvests become disappointing. The temptation is to remove everything at once. That is often a mistake. A severely neglected tree should usually be restored gradually over multiple years. Why? Because removing too much wood in a single season shocks the tree. Heavy pruning can trigger an explosion of water sprouts and reduce overall stability. Many experts recommend limiting removal to roughly 25 to 30% of the canopy during a single year. The exact amount depends on tree condition, vigor, and local growing conditions. Start by removing dead and diseased wood. Next, eliminate major structural problems. Then progressively open the canopy over several seasons. Patience often produces better long-term results than aggressive intervention. Here's an example familiar to many experienced gardeners. Imagine a 30-year-old apple tree that has not been pruned in a decade. The canopy is dense, branches overlap, and fruit production occurs mostly near the outer edges. The first year focuses on sanitation and opening major pathways for light. The second year removes additional overcrowded limbs. The third year refines structure and balances growth. By working gradually, the tree adapts successfully while maintaining health. Now let's discuss how pruning affects fruit production. Many gardeners fear that removing branches means sacrificing apples. Initially, pruning does reduce the total number of potential fruiting sites. However, the remaining sites often receive more resources, more sunlight, and better air circulation. As a result, fruit quality frequently improves. Larger apples. Better color. Improved flavor. More consistent production. Commercial orchards rely heavily on this principle. Producing fewer but higher quality apples often creates superior outcomes compared to allowing excessive fruit loads. Pruning also influences the balance between vegetative growth and fruiting. Vegetative growth refers to leaves and shoots. Fruiting growth refers to flower and fruit production. The healthiest trees maintain balance. Too much vegetative growth creates dense canopies. Too little growth eventually reduces productivity. Pruning helps regulate this balance. Now let's examine several common mistakes. Mistake number 1. Pruning too late. Late pruning after substantial growth has begun can stress the tree and reduce some benefits associated with dormant pruning. Mistake number 2. Removing too much wood. Over-pruning often stimulates vigorous water sprouts and delays balanced fruit production. Mistake number 3. Leaving stubs. Branches should generally be removed at the proper branch collar. The branch collar is the slightly swollen area where a branch joins a larger limb or trunk. Leaving long stubs interferes with natural healing. Mistake number 4. Making flush cuts. Cutting completely flush against the trunk removes important tissues involved in wound closure. The branch collar should remain intact. Mistake number 5. Ignoring tree structure. Random cutting creates random results. Every cut should have a purpose. Mistake number 6. Neglecting tool maintenance. Dirty or dull tools create unnecessary problems. Mistake number 7. Pruning out fruiting wood accidentally. Understanding the difference between vegetative shoots and fruiting spurs is critical for preserving harvest potential. Here's a surprising scientific insight. Trees do not heal wounds in the same way humans do. Instead of repairing damaged tissue directly, trees compartmentalize injuries. They isolate wounded areas and grow new tissue around them. This is why proper cut placement matters so much. Good cuts support efficient compartmentalization. Poor cuts create larger problems that remain visible for years. Another interesting fact involves branch angles. Branches growing at angles around 45 to 60 degrees often achieve an excellent balance between vigor and fruit production. Extremely upright branches tend to produce more vegetative growth. More horizontal branches often encourage fruiting. This relationship explains why branch training is frequently combined with pruning in professional orchards. Let's talk about spring weather considerations. Avoid pruning during wet conditions whenever possible. Moist environments can increase disease risks in some situations. Choose dry weather when practical. Likewise, avoid pruning during extreme cold. Very low temperatures can make wood brittle and increase injury risks. A calm, dry day near the end of dormancy often provides ideal working conditions. As you gain experience, you'll notice that every apple tree has its own personality. Different varieties exhibit different growth habits. Some are naturally vigorous. Others remain relatively compact. Some produce abundant water sprouts. Others maintain balanced growth with minimal intervention. Learning to observe these patterns helps refine pruning decisions year after year. One useful habit is taking photographs before and after pruning. Photos provide an objective record of changes. They also help evaluate results during future seasons. Many successful orchardists maintain pruning notes that track tree responses over time. This information becomes incredibly valuable as trees mature. Now let's summarize a practical step-by-step pruning workflow. First, inspect the entire tree. Second, remove dead, damaged, and diseased branches. Third, eliminate crossing and rubbing branches. Fourth, remove inward-growing shoots. Fifth, remove most water sprouts and suckers. Sixth, thin overcrowded areas to improve sunlight and airflow. Seventh, preserve strong scaffold branches and productive fruiting wood. Eighth, Maintain the desired canopy shape. 9th, avoid removing excessive wood in one season. 10th, clean tools and dispose of debris appropriately. Following this sequence creates a logical and efficient pruning process. Before we finish, here's one final insight that many experienced fruit growers eventually discover. Pruning is not about making the tree smaller. It's about making the tree better. Every cut should improve structure, increase light, enhance airflow, support fruit production, or protect health. When pruning decisions are guided by these principles, results become far more predictable. A well-pruned apple tree rewards patience. Year after year, it produces healthier growth, stronger branches, improved disease resistance, and higher quality fruit. So remember the key principles. Prune while the tree is dormant or just before active spring growth begins. Use clean, sharp tools. Remove dead, damaged, and diseased wood first. Create an open canopy that welcomes sunlight and airflow. Preserve productive fruiting wood. Avoid excessive pruning. Restore neglected trees gradually. And always make cuts with a clear purpose. Master these fundamentals, and you'll give your apple trees the best possible foundation for long-term health and abundant harvests. The effort invested during a single spring pruning session can influence fruit quality, tree vigor, and productivity for years to come. And when harvest season arrives, you'll see exactly why proper pruning remains one of the most valuable skills any apple grower can learn.